Rebekah Roth here again, and I'm going to share someone else's work with you. I am so I'm so impressed, and I really just want you to be able to get it out. And even though this channel is young and starting out, just maybe one of you might be able to take this gentleman's information to the right source. It will not be the FBI, but I do believe the state of Utah and the police department there may be interested. Not the FBI. Did I say that already? Okay, this is some information coming from a guy named Baron, B-A-R-O-N, Coleman, C-O-L-E-M-A-N, and that's the name of his YouTube channel. I'll put a link to his channel in the description box below this YouTube. I'm going to play some of one of his videos for you, just because it really touches home with the Charlie Kirk assassination and Google trend searches that have been done by foreign countries. I bet you can figure out which one it was, and when they took place, and who they searched and what they searched for around Orem, Utah. And I just want to talk to you just a few minutes about another interesting thing, because I'm always interested in airplanes. And there was an Egyptian airplane, military aircraft actually. I would say this might be an aircraft that maybe military intelligence might fly around, like our FBI and CIA have these kind of airplanes that they fly around. It's about a 14-passenger aircraft usually. I don't know the configuration of it, but custom, unless it's custom, they come off the manufacturer as about a 14-passenger aircraft with, of course, the pilots in addition to that. And this aircraft, which is very fascinating to me because I have friends that live in that area. I know people whose grandchildren were in the audience, so I've had lots of communication. I have friends down in St. George where Tyler Robinson and the furry guy live, and I'm just very interested in this. So I found this guy, just stumbled across this YouTube the other night, and it was just so fascinating. But one of the things that has taken place is an Egyptian military aircraft came into Provo, Utah's very small airport. I mean, this is not someplace you would expect the Egyptians to show up, and if they did, the chances of some reporter from that area would maybe write a story about it. So what did I do? I went to Grok. I took Casey the Car Guy's advice, and I had quite a conversation with Grok. Because when I first asked Grok, let me tell you, the aircraft tail number, as we call it, is S as in Sam, U as in unicorn, and a dash, like a hyphen, B as in boy, and T as in Tango, T again, Tango, Tango. And that's the tail number if you want to look it up. And Candace had mentioned it. I think she had it all wrong. I don't know what she said, to tell you the truth, but the reason I know she mentioned it is when I asked Grok, why would the Egyptian military in this airplane with this tail number be in Provo, Utah? All I got was Candace Owens' conspiracy theories. I kid you not. I finally am saying, Grok, could you tell me a news report that Egyptian military personnel were in Utah? Provo in particular, but Orem, Provo, Salt Lake, didn't matter. Well, Grok says there were no Egyptian military personnel in Utah during that time frame. The aircraft actually came into town, into Provo, on September 4th, and it left on September 10th. So I believe it left the morning of September 10th. Another interesting fact about this is, where did it go after it left Utah? It went to Wilmington, Delaware. You know, President Biden's home state, Delaware. And from there, on September 11th, it went direct to Cairo, it says. That's the information that I could find on it. But my point being, knowing people that live down there in Provo and that area, it's very odd that we would have guests from a foreign military that managed to land at a small airport without a military escort. for one, that wouldn't make any local news. But it didn't. It didn't. I finally went through and broke through to Grok, and I got back to when did it leave Cairo and where did it go after Cairo, and I found that it went to not Charles de Gaulle, but another airport in Paris, and then that it went from there to Minot, North Dakota, and then from there to Provo, Utah. So I really had to argue with Grok. I was feeling kind of like Casey the car guy there for a while. I was like, this is crazy. Now tell me something that does not include Candace Owens being a conspiracy nut. Okay, so let me just say this, because I've done a lot of research into espionage and how the Mossad operates and all of that stuff, and how infiltrated the Egyptian intelligence agency is by Mossad agents and double agents. Just saying. So I want you to pay attention to what Baron has to say, because I think it's important that you understand there were some foreigners here, could be 14 plus the 2 pilots, the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and they left early, I think the morning of the 10th, like around 7 in the morning. So they were here for 6 days, which would be plenty of time to do something. Certainly scope out the campus, because what we're finding now is that people that are all over YouTube, that are special forces guys, that have hunters, I mean, Utah's full of hunters, they're very familiar with the 30-06, and shot from the Losi building, it probably would have blown Charlie's, head off, say politely. And that's not what we saw happening. So a lot of people are looking into this, but we're not hearing anything from Kash Patel. Remember Kash Patel, that guy that said he was going to release the Epstein files right away? That guy? So we do have to look at this keep in mind, unless you know someone personally that's involved with the FBI, you probably don't need to ask them, because it looks like they're part of a cover-up. Just saying, right now it looks that way. But I want you to just pay attention to this guy. Go to his channel after I play some of his work, and then put a like on his YouTubes. Listen to all of them. I think he's got like 5 videos out, and they're fabulous. And it's interesting too, because this happened to me after my first book came out, and I talked about Airplane Manager. If you've read the books, you understand what I'm talking about. And the flight time to make the phone calls once the planes got on the ground changed with Flight Manager after I did a rather large, huge radio interview. I was like, wait a minute. Well, what Baron Coleman is finding out is that when he's doing these searches in this one particular small country in the Middle East, sort of, keeps coming up doing these searches just prior to Charlie Kirk's assassination, in a window from about the 18th of July to the 24th. There's a couple in August. They are coming from this very small country in the Middle East. And these are Google searches. These are people who searched things. So you want to pay really close attention to that. And this isn't all he has. He also checks to see, were people searching from Washington, D.C., inside of Utah, other states sometimes, but almost, well, let me just give you a hint. 7 of the surgeons at this relatively small hospital, Timpanogos Hospital, there in Orem where they took Charlie, had been searched around the week of July 20th, thereabouts. 24th, 18th, somewhere in there. All 7 of them from a tiny little country in the Middle East. I think you're figuring this out, right? So pay close attention. Go over to his channel, subscribe, like. His stuff is fabulous. I know if you like this kind of stuff. I mean, I really appreciate data collection, so this is kind of cool. He says that all of the stuff that he puts out on YouTube, he's already got downloaded and saved, now is being erased by, well, who? Who could do that? Who could erase Google Trends for the last 6 months, 12 months, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months. Who could do that? I suppose Google could, but maybe another foreign government with really good, like Unit 8200 kind of NSA type stuff. I don't know. Somebody's doing it though, but he smarter than the average bear, which is why I'm sharing his channel with you. He's really good at this. I guess he knew. I don't know what his past was. Maybe he's been called an anti-Semite. Maybe he kind of had an idea who was, why was Bibi Netanyahu so overpowering? Oh, we're so sorry. He did protest us too much, didn't he? So anyway, here you go. Without further ado, I'm bringing you Baron Coleman off his channel. There'll be a link in the description box. Buckle up. This is going to blow you away.
This way. I want to really get right into it today because I don't have a ton of time to kill. Probably a bad choice of words. All right. Let me say this. For the last couple of weeks, I've used this platform to look at what I think appears on its face to be a disturbing pattern of searches that I uncovered using the Google Trends tool on the Google platform. And the searches we reviewed, most of them, I think I might be able to say all of them originate from before Charlie Kirk was taken from this life, and they span the days, the weeks, and the months leading up to that fateful day in Orem, Utah on September 10th. And what Google Trends does is, if you're not familiar with it, you've missed the last couple of weeks. But if you're not familiar with it, what Google Trends does is it purports to reflect what searches were conducted and where and when those searches were conducted. And I take that at face value. I don't have access to the underlying data the results get, that support the results. And so I'll remind you what I've said the last couple of weeks. I draw no conclusions from what I find. I draw no conclusions from what I choose to present here. I cannot present everything I found. It's too numerous, too voluminous. It would take so many hours. You wouldn't watch it and I wouldn't do it. But what I am doing is presenting to you what appears to be fact, what appears in the Google Trends tool at the time I run the searches. I've noticed a pattern that sometimes the results change. And because of that, I've run a series of tests, believe it or not. And I've gotten kind of detailed in how I document these. A test of search terms from other current news events outside of the Charlie Kirk event in Orem, Utah. And I noticed those terms don't tend to disappear, at least not nearly at the pace that the terms associated with Charlie Kirk's story tend to disappear after I cover them. So tonight I want to walk you through a couple of examples of current stories breaking in America, both involving the shocking use of violence, much like we saw with Charlie Kirk. And I want to share this for a couple of reasons. One is to demonstrate, I guess, what it is that I do and how I do it when stories like these break, so that you can see what I'm doing and you can have confidence in what it is I present here. And another goal is to verify whether everything I cover disappears in the days, weeks, and months. Nice. To verify if everything that I cover disappears after I cover it. And again, I just want to clarify a couple of things. Google Trends searches that I have not discussed with other people, not friends, not family, that I just do on my own, and I haven't shared on this channel, they tend not to disappear. Google Trends searches I do share with others that we talk about, we trade text messages, and I cover on the channel, they have a bad habit of disappearing. And I'll leave it for you to decide what that means. But please know I'm tracking this in real time. Which ones I cover, which ones I share with other people, which ones disappear. And with that, let me take you to two horrific stories that have unfolded in the last 24 hours. Because I'll demonstrate what I do with these types of stories and how I analyze them. And after that, I'll show you close to 20 searches you have never. With that said, let me do away with the Which one do I want to start with? I think I want to start with this one. This is probably the one I can't believe I didn't run first. The very first thing after Charlie Kirk was shot, the very first thing that happened, I was actually on the phone with a good friend of mine that I've known for a decade and a half or longer, maybe. Been a long time now. I'm on the phone with him. We're discussing Kirk getting assassinated. Both of us just completely in shock. My friend actually knew him pretty well. And I mean, we're going through who could have done this. And I said, hey, they've arrested somebody. And we both pull up the pictures and we're looking at it. And they've arrested a little old man named George Zinn. You remember George Zinn? Not Z-Y-N like the nicotine pouches. Z-I-N, not Z-E-N like enlightenment and peace. No, we're talking Z-I-N-N, which I don't even know what that means. Apparently it means wackadoodle. So I go and I search George Zinn. You can see here where George Zinn was arrested. There's a little blip on September 10th in the District of Columbia. I'm assuming this is everybody racing to the computer to figure out who is the guy they just arrested. I don't know what this is. Maybe a few days later, people go, but look here, July 20th. Now this July 20 is going to become very important tonight. The week of around July 20th is going to become exceedingly important. And the amount of coincidences that take place between like a week before and a week after July 20 and all that time in between becomes very difficult to set aside, to disregard. So the fact that this was the first thing I looked up during this go around of searches, George Hodgson Zinn, that's the full name of the guy that they first arrested. You remember, this is the old guy who stands up within seconds of Charlie Kirk being assassinated. I did it. I shot him. And then as they're dragging him away, his pants fall down. He's like, shoot me. That's George Hodgson Zinn. And he was searched, or this term was searched, according to Google, with an IP address originating in the District of Columbia on July 21, 2025. And again, I tell you, keep the anchor date around July 20 in your mind tonight. Because after I did that, I thought, I wonder if anybody Googled the hospital where they took Charlie Kirk. Wonder if anybody Googled the hospital where they took Charlie Kirk. They took him to Timpanogos Regional Hospital. That's there in the district. I mean, that's there in Utah. They have, I think, a campus in Orem, Utah. So I go District of Columbia. Here's where, again, on September 10th, 11th, right there, you see the searches for Timpanogos Regional Hospital, people looking for where they took Charlie Kirk. But you'll see this spike of interest in Timpanogos Regional Hospital out of D.C., and then no interest for 2 solid months before the shooting. But again, keep in mind that July 20 anchor date. Here we have a July 16, 2025. And then we have a July 3, and we have a June 28. And if you go out 12 months, you'll notice you even had one back then, and then this all kind of goes out. So something's going on here at the Timpanogos Regional Hospital search. And then right the day before the shooting, somebody in the District of Columbia says, we should really make sure we know what the Timpanogos Regional Hospital is. We really should make sure we know the day before he gets shot. So you had that July 20 anchor date, the time around there. You had a time way back. That could be anything. And then the day before, somebody zeroes in and says, we need to look up Timpanogos Regional Hospital. Maybe they're looking up an address. Maybe they're looking up, who knows? But again, I'm just reporting the facts. I'm not drawing conclusions tonight. I could give you possible conclusions you could draw, and you could draw your own conclusions, or you could just sit back and look and learn like I did. Because after Timpanogos Regional Hospital, I thought, I wonder who the medical examiner is in Utah. I wonder who the medical examiner is in Utah, because it appears to me, based on everything I've looked at, that Charlie Kirk may not have had an autopsy, which I find shocking. Shocking. Because an autopsy could give you a lot of things, such as what angle did the bullet come in? Where did the bullet go? What type of bullet was it? What damages were done to the organs? Were there any other injuries? And this is going to come up in a minute. Were there any other injuries anywhere else in the body? And so I wondered who the medical examiner was there in Utah. And I looked her up. She's a woman named Deidre Amaro. And she was looked up, but this time not in the District of Columbia, but in Israel, which I thought was very strange. June 30th of 2025. In Israel. June 30th, 2025, an IP address originating in Israel. Again, we talked last week about the ways IP addresses can end up somewhere. But Deidre Amaro, the medical examiner there in Utah, somebody with an IP address originating in Israel decided they were very interested in Deidre Amaro. And lest you think I didn't check, the reason I'm not showing you others, go to the District of Columbia, for example, not there. You can even go to Utah and see. Not there. So if it's not in the District of Columbia and it's not in Utah, this is not a very common search, is what I'm pointing out here. Not a very common search at all. But there it was in Israel. So I thought, that's weird. That's weird. So I press on. I wonder. Well, I'll skip that one. Oh, now I go see if I can find him here. Guy named Bo Mason. You guys ever heard of Bo Mason? Bo Mason is the commissioner of the Utah Department of Public Safety. In other words, a high-ranking law enforcement official there in Utah. Bo Mason. Now, I noticed Bo Mason got appointed to that position on July 17th. Again, that anchor right around July 20th. He was appointed a few weeks before that, and he took the role on July 17th, replacing a guy named Jess L. something, who resigned. I can't remember it all off the top of my head. But again, District of Columbia, Bo Mason, right? You could say, hey, he's a law enforcement official. Notice how close that is to July 20th again. We got it right in that same window where I told you really watch that time period. Really watch that time period right around July 20th tonight. Something caused a lot of these searches to take place right in a very narrow band of time. But again, this one could be explained away as, hey, he got appointed the very next day. He got appointed on July 17th there in Utah. So maybe on July 16th, someone says, we need to look at who the new Department of Public Safety head is going to be in Utah. Maybe. Now I want to show you a very interesting story that I found and was just absolutely baffled by this story. This is a guy named John Cullen. Think of him what you will. A lot of people have strong opinions about him, but he's one of these what I used to call a Twitter terrorist, a guy who posts all the time on what now called X, the new platform X. He discovered, or somebody pointed out to him, and he's really been covering it, that there was a plane, this plane here, a Bombardier Global 6500 with the tail number November 1098 Lima. And on the day Charlie Kirk was died, it made two very interesting flights and deviations from flights. It had booked a flight, or it had flight plans from, I think, New Mexico to Montana, which would take it right near Orem, Utah, the site of the rally. This was not an unusual flight for this plane. But on the day of the shooting, It actually dropped. This plane can go up to 51,000 feet cruising altitude. It's a U.S. spy plane, basically. And on the day of the shooting, it comes all the way down to 203 or 204 feet off the deck, off the ground, and it's flying at nearly stall speed. The first time it did that was heading north on its path to Montana. It deviates from its flight plan. It comes down to from 30 to 50,000 feet in the air. It comes all the way down to 204 feet, and it flies within 2 miles of the campus of Utah Valley University at 204 feet. You know how low that is in the air? 204 feet at nearly stall speed, like 113 knots or 118 knots. I can't remember. This right here says 129 knots where they picked it up. And then on the way back, and then it goes back up, and on the way back, 25 minutes after Kirk was assassinated, it comes back through the Orem, Utah area, back down to 203 or 204 feet, the exact same height it flew before, at nearly the exact same speed, 25 minutes after Kirk was assassinated. Nearly stall speed. A gust of wind could have knocked that plane out of the sky. And then it goes back up and on its way. Well, I thought, and then remember this tail number here, N1098L, November 1098 Lima. So I think that's a weird thing. I mean, that's unusual. So let's look it up. Let's look up November 1098 Lima. And let's see, just for the sake of argument, is there anybody in the world who is curious about this plane at this time? And in fact, I did find somebody. And if I can find the dadgum tab, I'll tell you who it was. What did I do with it? There it is. That was supposed to be really quick and cool transition, and then it wasn't. I found 1098, November 1098 Lima. It was searched again out of Israel in the weeks leading up to the shooting. August 8th, a month and 2 days before the shooting, a month and 2 days before this plane does a very weird 200-foot flyby of the campus at nearly stall speed. Now, we've learned since that this plane has the capacity to deploy drones. I've seen news articles, I've seen videos. This plane, this jet, is a U.S. government contracted spy plane. It has the ability to deploy drones. Somebody with an IP address originating in Israel, and again, we talked about all the ways that can happen, took an interest in this particular tail number about 32 days before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Maybe it's related, maybe it's not. So we press on. Do you remember the stink? One of the major things the left did as soon as Charlie Kirk was assassinated. I mean, his body wasn't even cool yet. And they're already blaming Donald Trump and Kash Patel for it because, well, they traded out the special agent in charge there in Salt Lake City like a bunch of cowboys. They just going around firing people. Well, maybe we look into that. Has anyone in the world taken an interest in the old special agent in charge there in Salt Lake City? It wasn't even cool yet. And they're already blaming Donald Trump and Kash Patel for it because, well, they traded out the special agent in charge there in Salt Lake City like a bunch of cowboys. They just going around firing people. Well, maybe we look into that. Has anyone in the world taken an interest in the old special agent in charge there in Salt Lake City? Yes, July 9th. Remember, about 10 or 11 days before that July 20 date I tell you to keep anchoring on July 9th, somebody looks up the old special agent in charge, Mahtab Syed. And lest you think that's kind of a name that, well, maybe that's just a particular, hey, I even added the middle initial, Matab A. Sayed. Again, Israel. Again, August 10th. What about the new guy? Who replaced him? Robert Bowles replaced him. Well, let's look up Robert Bowles. Anybody in the world looking at Robert Bowles? Yeah. Our friends in Israel, or an IP address originating in Israel, September 1st. So they took someone with an IP address originating in Israel, took a keen interest in the special agent in charge in Utah, and then when that special agent in charge changed in the weeks leading up to the assassination, they took a keen interest in the new guy. And again, lest you think this is just a name that gets searched all the time, not in D.C. This is the special agent in charge of the Salt Lake City. No one in District of Columbia was interested in it. Israel was. What about Matab Sayed? Any interest in the District of Columbia there? No interest. But Israel took an interest for whatever reason in who the special agent in charge was. Now, finally, this is not finally, but this is probably, I'm at the scene right now. We're at the scene. We're leading up to it. I was particularly struck by how quickly people gave up on the idea that the question that was asked when Charlie Kirk was assassinated could have anything to do with it. It was like too perfect of a coincidence. It was talking about transgender gun violence. It was a lefty. I think he has a podcast. I don't know. I don't want to speak out of turn. Guy's name's Hunter Kozak. Hunter Kozak goes to the stage. Now, I have heard where he said out of his mouth, he pre-screened this question with Charlie Kirk's team. They were fine with him asking this question. It's not like he caught Charlie Kirk unaware with this question. The team reviewed the question, reviewed the questioner, and determined, yes, you may ask this question live to Charlie Kirk at the American Comeback Tour event in Orem, Utah, at Utah Valley University, in the UVU courtyard. And initially, people came up and said, oh, that question has to be related. It's just too convenient. You know, they had the little transgender terms on the bullets, for example. And this guy was living with someone who may or may not be transitioning from male to female and may or may not wear puppy dog costumes and think he's a dog or something. I don't know what the facts are. Not my culture. Not making fun of it. Just telling you I have limitations on my ability to discuss it. But his name was Hunter Kozak. K-O-Z-A-K. And I thought to myself, actually, someone recommended this one. I would love to take credit for searching this one, but a friend of mine recommended this one. Lo and behold, our friends in Israel were searching the name Hunter Kozak, or someone with an IP address originating in Israel, were searching the name Hunter Kozak on 3 August 2025. Again, look at it again. I don't want you to lose it because I'm going to switch it over to the District of Columbia in a second. I might even switch it to Utah. I don't know if I've done Utah yet, but on August 3, 2025, Hunter Kozak searched with an IP address originating in Israel. Now let's do the District of Columbia. Anyone within our nation's capital curious about this guy? No. Anybody inside the state of Utah curious about this guy? Only after the shooting. But our friends on the other side of the world, for some reason, took an interest in this guy. So I press on. Believe it or not, I'm not done. I'm going to try to wrap this up in an hour today, but I can't guarantee it. Cannot guarantee it. Okay, so let me move on from, we've done George Zen, we've done Timpanogos Regional Hospital, we've done Deidre Amaro, we've done Bo Mason, we've done November 1098 Lima, we've done Matab Sayed, we've done Matab A. Sayed, we've done Robert Bowles, and we've done Hunter Kozak. Now, one could argue all of this is just some strange coincidence. They could. Sorry if that was disgusting. Oh man, bringing the receipts. I wish these could be picked up by someone with a bigger mic. I know you probably prefer to stay low key. I do prefer to stay low key. I do not want any credit for any of this. But I will say this. There's a reason people with bigger mics don't pick this up. Well, there might be more than one reason. But there's at least one reason they don't pick this up. All right. This one gets a little deep. This one, if you have a 5-point safety harness in your seat, you might want to go ahead and fasten it. You will have full access to your entire seat. You will only need the front edge for this one. This one took a little research. I was very curious when the Talking Points USA spokesperson came out and said they had spoken to the surgeon, but didn't give the surgeon's name. So I thought, who's the surgeon? Again, this is the surgeon who looked, according to the Talking Points USA spokesperson, who seems like a nice guy, not knocking him at all. Only doing his job, relaying the message that he was given from the surgeon, just letting the world know about it. Fine with it. This is the guy who said, hey, Charlie's made of steel. This bullet would have normally gone through almost anybody, but not Charlie, he's made of steel. But he didn't give the surgeon's name. And again, remember, Deidre Amora, they didn't do an autopsy, I don't think. At least that's the news on the street. They didn't do an autopsy. So I go and I get a list of all the surgeons I can find at the Orem branch of Timpanogos Regional Hospital. And I think, could anyone have looked up any of these people? The first surgeon I could find was a guy named Stephen Nealman. Stephen Nealman. Remember that date, July 20. This is July 18th. This is July 18th. Stephen Nealman. July 18th, 2025. This was out of our friends on the other side of the planet over there. Very curious about the surgeons in Utah, you'll find out. I go to the next one I could find, Robert Patterson. I found a lot, so I added an MD to it. Robert Patterson, MD. July 23 and 24. This may have been the only one that was searched twice, 2 days in a row. July 23 and 24, Robert Patterson, MD. Again, I just find online a list of surgeons at Timpanogos. I eliminate people like the breast reconstruction surgeons because I didn't think that was necessary to look up. Actually, I might have looked up one of them. But I found the general surgeons, the emergency surgeons, all the people who minor surgery. I looked them all up. I go to the next one, Lee Trotter. Has anyone looked up Lee Trotter? Again, notice the date. Notice the date. This is right in that July 20 area, that July 20 timeline. Someone with an IP address originating in Israel, looking up Surgeon Lee Trotter, near about that same July 20 time period. Are there other surgeons in the area? Yeah, as a matter of fact, there is. There's a guy named Lee Patterson. So I look up Lee Patterson. Notice the date, July 19th. Somebody with an IP address originating in Israel in the week of July 20, that week on either side of July 20, was very interested in all the people who practice surgery at Timpanogos Regional Hospital in Orem, Utah. There was a lot of interest from an IP address originating there. Now, let's just, we talked about the different, let's say someone's using a VPN. At this point, if I'm the FBI or I'm the Utah State Police, I think this is still a Utah State Police matter, by the way. This didn't cross jurisdictional lines, I don't think. If I'm the Utah State Police, I'm calling Google and saying, I need to know the IP addresses that hit this. I need to know if this belongs to a VPN. Does it belong to this? Is it the same IP address that looked up all the different surgeons in my county? Because there's more, by the way. There's a guy named Brian Gill, probably a very talented surgeon. July 22, IP address originating in Israel. What about Richard Rasmussen? I'm sure he's a fine surgeon, a nice guy, probably a pillar of the community. Also searched July 14th, IP address originating in Israel, Richard Rasmussen. Again, if I'm the state police, if I'm the FBI, I have real concerns that my surgeons are being searched within a very narrow time window, like 7 to 10 days of each other. And I want to know, is it the same IP address looking at all of them? Because I want to know who the hell is so curious about my surgeons in my local hospital. If I'm the FBI, I might ask, is this related to an assassination where they rushed the body there and there was a surgeon that declared Charlie Kirk a Superman and claims he found the bullet and then signed the death certificate and there was no autopsy? And people may have been searching these surgeons. What about William Pugh? He's a fine surgeon, I'm sure. July 30th, about 10 days after July 20th. But by July 30th, there's still someone over there still searching surgeons. Now, it's possible there are even more surgeons that I couldn't find. That's possible. There are more surgeons that I couldn't find. There might be dozens of surgeons. I don't know how big of a hospital this is. I don't know how many beds it has. I don't know how many surgeries it does on a normal basis. I don't know how many emergency surgeries it does. And so I can't tell if I got them all. But I do know this. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 surgeons at Timpanogos General Hospital, Regional Hospital, and they were all searched by an IP address originating in Israel within about a 2-week period, a couple of months before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. I do know that. Zoom the wrong thing. So the one piece of this I don't understand is, do you bank it all on a single shot? Because that's what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, and they missed. Whoever they is, it was not Thomas Matthew Crooks, I can assure you. He did not outsmart the U.S. Secret Service and the state police and the Beaver County police. He did not outsmart everybody. I promise you. whatever else is true, that is 100% true. He was not working alone if he was involved at all. Tyler James Robinson was not working alone if he was involved at all beyond a gun drop, which I think he just did a gun drop. I don't think he was on the building. That's not Tyler James Robinson jumping off that building. It's just not. Guys, 22-year-old goober who lives with a furry is not scaling a 15-foot building and running off. That doesn't happen. That's not how the world works. So this is a good question, Ian. I've watched the videos on repeat. I cannot comprehend the implosion in the shirt. Mid-back appears to bulge out behind him due to some force. Here is something I've not yet settled on, but I did do a search on this just to make sure, because there was a lot of speculation that his mic may have been wired. So I found out what kind of mic he was wearing, a Rode Wireless Go 2, and I did the search for it. And wouldn't you know, 8 days after all the surgeons were searched, a Rode Wireless Go 2 was searched, again with an IP address originating in Israel. That same fateful 2-week window, July 14 to July 30, right in that 2-week window, when all this seems to be, if you could draw any conclusions, all this kind of seems to be planned during that period of time. What if you had a backup plan? Are you going to deploy that many assets? You're going to deploy a patsy that we're going to set up to take the fall. We're going to deploy guys in the crowd that are signaling people, guys obviously behind the stage that are signaling people, guys near Charlie who may be signaling people. Let's be honest, people. Let's just be honest for a minute. The guy stepping forward and giving the steal sign was weird, right? This was steal when I played ball. Yeah, do. That was steal. I still remember that 30 years later. Second signal after the double key. Steal. All right. The guy stepping forward and grab it's weird. It's weird. Totally weird. Especially when lanyard guy leans in and looks under the tent just before guy steps in and gives the steal sign. But if you're going to deploy all these assets, are you going to take the chance that the gunshot is successful, strikes him, and kills him? Or might you have a backup plan? Something that makes a giant commotion under the shirt, applies enough force to knock him down, enough force to shock him so that you could come over and then tackle him and finish the job right there on the scene. I will remind you, RFK was blamed on Sirhan Sirhan. The evidence appears that Sirhan was on the opposite side from where Robert Kennedy was shot, meaning someone else shot him at close range with a silenced weapon. I will remind you that Ronald Reagan was allegedly shot, but Ronald Reagan's testimony was he didn't really feel the pain until he got in the limo. When people were climbing on top of him in the limo, and it appears he may have been shot at close range with a silenced weapon. Was that the backup plan for Kirk? There were a lot of people with weapons right there around Kirk, if you recall the video in the immediate aftermath. Or there could have been people with weapons in the car driving him away. Turek wasn't supposed to be in that car, recall. So I can see there being a backup plan. Let's get the signals down, right? Second signal after the double key, that's your steal sign. I don't know whether I don't know that Turek was involved at all. I'm not blaming Turek. I am raising questions about Arm Boy. And I can